Welcome to Start Dakota, a show by Startup Sioux Falls where we dispel misconceptions about starting a business, uncover unique challenges faced by founders, highlight today's problem solvers, and build a stronger startup community for tomorrow. This project is powered by the SBA. Now, here's your host, Brienne Maynor.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Start Dakota, brought to you by Startup Sioux Falls and powered by the SBA. Today, we're going to be talking to Kendra Cersosimo of Cersosimo Creative, who is a native of the area from Mitchell, South Dakota. And we want to just hear a little bit more about her experience with the ecosystem and specifically our Co.STARTERS program. So welcome to the show today, Kendra. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. I am a listener of the program, and so it's exciting to be on as a guest.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. In 30 seconds or less, can you describe your business and just kind of the business model behind it?
Yeah, so Kendra Cersosimo Creative, I provide businesses with professional social media, graphic design, and marketing services. So whether a business needs billboards or brochures designed or social media content or advertising, I basically work with businesses to elevate their brand across platforms.
Yep. And when you say businesses, who specifically is your customer and what problem are you solving for them?
Yeah, so I work with small and mid-sized businesses that don't necessarily have a marketing team or they don't necessarily have a marketing person on staff.
Yep.
And so sometimes these marketing jobs get left to the admin coordinator or the owner or the GM, and they have so many things going on that designing a brochure or a flyer in Microsoft Word isn't necessarily something that
other duties as assigned,
exactly,
right?
Exactly. And so isn't necessarily something that they have time for or that they really are an expert in, if that makes sense. And
absolutely.
So those are the clients that I really love working with.
Yeah.
And they can pass on, hey, I need this in the next week. Can you design this brochure, or can you create social media content for the next month, or that sort of thing? And it really just takes off their plate a bunch of marketing services that they would either not do or try to do themselves.
Yeah.
And so that's who I work with specifically and the problems that they're occurring.
So speaking of that, marketing services are a competitive space. How do you see yourself competing in this crowded space? And what makes small creative shops like yours stand apart from those larger agencies?
Yeah, that's a great question. So for the most part, I don't as much work with large companies that have very large advertising campaigns that they need an agency for.
Yep.
I work with these smaller businesses that they know what they need. They're not necessarily doing large ad campaigns, but they need this project here. They need this project there. And I'm working with these businesses that really need a variety of items without having to pay the agency pricing.
Right.
And so that's the power of freelancing, is that you find individuals like myself that have experience in all of this and have degrees in these specific fields and can really share our talents with businesses and without having to pay large amounts to agencies, if that makes sense.
Do you find yourself also consulting with these businesses ahead of time if they're just overwhelmed with which platforms should I be using as a business? Where do you seek some of that higher level expertise?
Yeah. So I definitely do some consulting as well, and really just having conversations with these business owners or whoever in the business I am working with.
Yep.
And really thinking, okay, what makes sense for your business?
Yeah.
My experience is, prior to owning my own business, I worked for corporate marketing departments.
Yeah.
And so I really have that experience of brainstorming and talking about marketing plans and what is best for that individual company.
Absolutely.
Not every company advertises the same way and not everything works for everyone.
Right.
And so that's the importance of specifically working with each client and finding out what is your best route for marketing.
Absolutely. So let's talk about little Kendra growing up in Mitchell, South Dakota.
Yes.
I'm very curious what your childhood was like and how you got to your why behind wanting to start this business, that moment when you decided to take the leap. I'm very curious.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I will say when I was younger, and my 3rd and 4th grade teacher still remembers this, is I always said I was going to own Kendra's Crafts someday.
Oh.
And I was always a really creative kid.
Yeah.
Whether it was, I used to, while my siblings were out playing sports and doing much more interesting things, I was at the kitchen table, gluing construction paper to jars and making animals out of, jars and cans and things out of the pantry. And so I've always been pretty creative. I would say, when I was younger, I wanted a Kendra's Crafts. I wanted to craft all day long.
Yeah.
However, then come to high school, I always knew I wanted to be a graphic designer.
Yeah.
That wasn't really, I think I knew as early as sophomore year of high school. And so that was never a question for me. I think what was interesting is that all through high school and all through college and even out of college, I never wanted to be a business owner.
Yeah.
To me, I love stability. I love schedule. I love a routine. And so being a freelancer was never something that sounded like something that I wanted. It sounded really unstable. It sounded out of my comfort zone, if that makes sense.
Totally.
And so it wasn't necessarily something I wanted to do until 2020 and the pandemic hit.
Oh, geez.
And so starting in the pandemic, out of fear of losing a job and also out of somewhat boredom of being quarantined by myself.
So when those wild ideas start to bake, right?
Yes. And I started, started freelancing more and more. And then I realized, wait, there's a need for this.
Yep.
And there's businesses that will pay me to do this and that need me to do this for them. Otherwise, they won't have these services done. And I think that's what really became my why and became my passion, is that I get to work with some great clients. And in turn, I get to own a business and start a business. And I think getting my mind out of, I'm not just a freelancer, I'm now a business owner.
Yeah.
And that's been really exciting and really fulfilling for me.
So it sounded like there were some hesitations along the way there. So I'm curious, what barriers and hurdles do you feel like you needed to overcome to even consider taking this leap into entrepreneurship? What was going through your head as some of those worries?
Yeah, so a lot. I am generally a worrier, I would say. I think there was a lot of unsure. I wasn't really sure how to start a business, and I think what really, it was a side business for, started probably more in 2018, 2019, and then ramped up in 2020.
Sure.
And by 2021, it got to the point where I either needed to stop spending all my nights and weekends pouring my, soul into this business, or I needed to take the leap of faith and do it. Yeah. Then it was trying to find, listening to podcasts, reading books, trying to figure out, how the heck do I start a business? I have no idea, and it was finding local resources and finding, whether it was an accountant saying, this is how you would set this up, or a health insurance provider saying, this is how you would get health insurance. Also, talking to a financial advisor and say, this is the steps you need to take to pursue this. And, it was the more and more people I talked to, I think the more realistic starting a business sounded. And also the more confidence I got of, oh my gosh, I can do this. This is not some far-fetched idea. This is a reality, and I'm close. I'm really close to doing it.
And you were doing this all in the midst of the pandemic, so we were all very shut in at that time. Did you find opportunities to connect in person, or was this all done virtually?
Yeah, I actually did a majority of it in person, which was nice. I would say I started really taking these business meetings probably later in 2020, early 2021.
Okay.
So by that time, people were starting to talk.
To come back out. Yep.
They're starting to meet in person.
Yep.
And so, meeting with the South Dakota Small Business Association and meeting with, a financial advisor, or,
That's great.
I took some accounting or some meetings over the phone with an accountant. And so things like that started to be in person, which was crucial.
Like what you hear so far? Make sure to never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now. Now, back to the show.
So now I have to ask, when did you become aware of the offerings that the SBA's Community Navigators pilot program and the Co.STARTERS program, when did you first learn about that, and how did you hear about it?
So I will say it was probably a little, it was later on in the process, and I wish it would have been earlier, because I have gained tremendous support from Startup Sioux Falls and from the Small Business Association and the Co.STARTERS program.
Yeah.
I originally heard about it through Laura Clock.
Okay.
And she was the facilitator for the Co.STARTERS program in Mitchell. She was one of them, along with.
And you worked for her, right?
I worked for her, yes.
I totally stalked your LinkedIn, by the way.
Perfect. Yes. I did work at Clockworks.
Yep.
And so when I was in high school, I job shadowed Laura Clock as a graphic designer for Clockworks.
Okay.
And I worked for Clockworks for a couple summers later as well.
Nice.
And so I saw that Laura Clock had posted on LinkedIn or on Facebook and said, hey, this opportunity is coming to Mitchell. I encourage people to apply.
Yeah.
And so I clicked on the link, read a little bit more about it. And honestly, it seemed too good to be true. It seemed like such a great opportunity.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where it was like, why wouldn't I?
Yeah.
I have a graphic design degree. I have a master's in management and project management. But none of those really prepared me to start a business.
Yeah.
And so that was exactly what the Co.STARTERS program provided me.
Awesome.
And was kind of a no-brainer to apply.
Yeah. I'm thinking about how the growth of each individual as they go through these programs and what their expectations are at the beginning and how they come out at the end of those 10 weeks. And I read through your program application as well.
Yeah.
And there were just a couple of things that you mentioned about what you were looking to gain through the program. And I'll read back just a little bit of that. But you mentioned that you still have a lot to learn from a business standpoint, that you love learning, and you think topics like finding the right solution, structures and systems, and financial modeling, which are 3 of the weeks of the course, could substantially help your business. Do you feel like you got what you were looking for? And what were you surprised about along the way? What was something that you learned that you weren't expecting to learn?
Yeah, definitely. I think I gained all of those. I mean, like you mentioned, there are specific sessions in the program that really hone in on those specific items. And it was just a game changer for my business. And I think some of the things I was surprised about is I'm not going to lie, I was nervous going into day one.
Sure, you weren't alone.
I thought, I didn't love night classes in college, and here I'm willingly doing it again. And so, however, I got there and, am joined by, we have 12 entrepreneurs. Some people were like me, only a couple of us already had our business full time.
Yeah.
A lot of people had their business, but really wanted to grow it. And then some people knew they wanted to be a business owner, just didn't necessarily know what they wanted to do. And so what I was most surprised about is that we got in there and we learned from our amazing facilitators, Ryan Van Zee and Laura Clock, but it was less of them lecturing and more of, how does this apply to each and every one of your businesses? Yeah. Which was more than I could have ever imagined the class would be, or the program would be. And each Tuesday night, we got to come and share what our highs were for the week. We got to share what our lows were for the week. And we got to collaborate with, essentially about 15 others or 15 people in the room and say, how do you guys think we could solve this problem? Or how would you go about this issue? Or, hey, this really went well this week, and everyone's cheering you on. And I think for me, entrepreneurship has been somewhat lonely, and I am a one-woman business, which is I'm very proud of. But it's also very lonely.
Yeah.
And I think going into Co.STARTERS, you got that community of other founders and starters that really validated exactly what I was doing and what I wanted to do with my business.
I was going to ask you that too, because that was another point that you made in your application, that you're looking to find a community. And it sounds like you found that through the cohort itself. I'm curious, some people are of the opinion that it might be better to have a cohort full of the same industry or the same, the same topic versus a diversity of industry, which is what we find when we put these cohorts together. People are coming from all different stages of business and different industries.
Right.
How was that impactful to the process?
Oh, I loved it. I mean, what was interesting is, I sat down first day and I'm sitting next to, a dog groomer and a photographer and somebody who owns someone who wants to own a, liquor store and things like that. And it's all like, how are we similar, and going through that. And it's like, okay, so, I know my lane and that's nice. And they all know their lane. However, we have so many things in common as business owners and so many of the same, we still need to build the foundation for our business.
Yeah.
While it might look different for every single person, some of us provide services, some of us provide products. However, we still all need to go through the same steps, but in a somewhat different way, and it was really fun to collaborate with other people that way.
As a consumer, I have some opinions about how liquor stores should be operated, just for the record.
Perfect.
What was I going to say to that? I guess if we talk a little bit more about community and the camaraderie that comes with the cohort, another element or another level or layer to this is that you are also paired with a mentor, and that folks are coming in and providing, real life examples of their own entrepreneurial journeys. Have there been any special relationships forged through those outside resources coming in and speaking to you and mentoring you that that have been helpful to you in your process?
Yes, definitely. Each week, like you mentioned, we had somebody new from the community come in and speak to each and every theme of the week, if that makes sense.
Yep.
And so, we had an accountant come in one week, and I think that was one of my favorite weeks, was that Matt Dorr from Salt and Light Group, CPA out of Mitchell.
I'm sure an accountant would be thrilled to hear this, by the way, that was the most exciting session for you.
Yes, shout out to Matt Dorr.
Woo!
Is he came in and, for me, I had my business pretty solidified into what I want to do, what services I offer, that sort of thing.
Yep.
However, the leading up to that week in particular, there were some questions that I had about tech specific items, like, for instance, I had just given a larger donation to a nonprofit, and that was my first for my business.
Interesting.
And so, it's one of those things where it's like, I know that's a write-off come tax time. How do I go about that? Yeah. And what do I categorize that as? Or how do I put it into QuickBooks like that? And things like that, where those are just small little things. But when you're a business owner of a business of one, I'm not sure who to ask.
Exactly.
And so it was, so having people come in each week and be able to ask them questions, and also with the mentality of no question is a dumb question, was awesome. And so it was really fun to hear each and every business owner's story, but also get to hear from the experts of how to correctly go about these areas.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get to the next steps for you on your journey, but I think we're going to take a short break and hear from some of our resource partners, and we'll be right back.
Sounds great.
Welcome to the Business Minute, a recurring segment powered by the SBA, where we'll share business facts and resources available to entrepreneurs throughout the U.S. Small Business Administration. This is Sadie Sweer, Executive Director of SD CEO East Women's Business Center. Did you know, despite losing 9.1 million jobs in the first 2 quarters of 2020, small business growth rebounded swiftly following the COVID-19 recession. In the 4 quarters following, small businesses have gained 5.5 million jobs, making up for 60% of the decline during the early pandemic. Small businesses have generated 12.9 million net new jobs over the past 25 years, accounting for 2 out of every 3 jobs added to the economy. Interested in starting a business or already own one? There are many free resources available. One of those resources is the South Dakota Small Business Development Center, a University of South Dakota Beacom School of Business outreach program. The SBDC serves small businesses in the state of South Dakota by assisting with business planning, operational improvement, and product or market development. The SBDC provides one-on-one, confidential, no-cost business advising on a statewide basis with offices in Aberdeen, Pierre, Rapid City, Sioux Falls, Watertown, and Yankton. Learn more about SBDC at sdbusinesshelp.com.
Welcome back. We're talking with Kendra Cersosimo of Kendra Cersosimo Creative, and we were just about to hear where she's at in her entrepreneurial journey. She's had 10 weeks of co-starters under her belt. I'm sure a lot has transpired between the end of the cohort and now. Kendra, can you give us a little insight as to where you're at with your business and what that next step is? What's that next hurdle that you need to overcome?
Yeah, so I have been in my business now full-time for a little over a year. So I hit my year mark in
Congratulations.
August. Thank you.
That's huge.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. And so I started originally as mostly doing graphic design work. And so that's what my degree is in, is graphic design, my bachelor's degree. And so my business started out mostly at graphic design. And then I really found, like I mentioned, the need that businesses have for more than just graphic design, and they need social media, they need website help, they need all of these different things that fall under marketing.
Yep.
And so I've really pivoted my business into being kind of a one-woman shop, if we want to call it that, is being a place for, a business owner or a small to mid-sized business who needs more than just graphic design. And so I've kind of branched into more the social media side of things, which my last corporate job for the last 3 years have been, or for 3 years prior to going full-time in my business, was bringing Poet's social media efforts in-house.
Nice.
And so I worked for the Poet headquarters here in Sioux Falls and did all of their social media. So planning the content, scheduling the content, optimizing it, monitoring it, but also running social media ads.
Amazing.
And so it was kind of one of those things where it's like, I have the experience in it.
Yep.
Now, how do I offer that to my clients?
Absolutely.
And I've really branched into the social media side of things as well. And so that's kind of where my business is headed.
Yep.
Is more being not just graphic design, but really niching myself as doing more marketing for my clients.
Yeah. Well, I forgot that you worked for Poet too.
Yes,
so
yes.
Another just very notable entrepreneurial organization that has
definitely
scaled like beyond our wildest dreams.
Right.
How were those experiences influential to you getting to this stage of entrepreneurship? Because I have to imagine working inside of Poet, you're working for entrepreneurs. There's got to be a little bit of, I don't know, just something a little bit different that comes with that.
Yeah, definitely. I think, working for Poet with Jeff Broyne being an entrepreneur, but also like I mentioned, I worked for Clockworks growing up.
Yep.
And so, Brian Clock being the entrepreneur that he is, I also worked for Mega Gymnastics in Mitchell, and Audra
nice.
Rue started that from the ground up, and I think just seeing all of these successful business owners and seeing the transition of start to where they are now.
Yeah.
Really was eye-opening and also definitely inspiring.
Yep.
To start my own business and kind of navigate the hardships and the challenges, but also really celebrate the highs of where
You bet.
they can go.
To get a little meta here, we're storytelling. This is part of the,
Yeah.
the purpose of a podcast is to get these stories out into the world to inspire more people to take the leap into entrepreneurship. What other pieces do you feel like we need more of in the entrepreneurial ecosystem? And what are we lacking that you from your lens see that we need to implement more of?
Yeah. I think first off, thank you for all of the resources between Startup Sioux Falls and SBA, SDCEO, Women's Business Center.
Shout out to Sadie.
Yes. Shout out to Sadie. I think, and even the Mitchell Chamber of Commerce as well, and all of, the Co.STARTERS program.
Yep.
I think there are so many resources out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish I would have known these resources existed when I had this inkling of an idea to start my business.
And that's interesting because you are so in tune to social and digital. Like, how did we miss you?
Yes.
What do we need to do? I probably need to consult with you, Kendra.
But I think also, I think the biggest part for me was the biggest piece for me that I couldn't wrap my head around was social media, not social media, was health insurance.
Health insurance.
Yes, I think health insurance. And I also think trying to figure out, how do I pay myself?
Yeah.
I've always been in corporate jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know the paycheck is coming every Friday. I know I can get health insurance through my company.
Yep.
And I think those two pieces were the last two puzzle pieces that really needed to fall into place before I took the leap of faith to go full time. Yeah. And so I think those two pieces were the kind of the resources I was really looking for and seeking out.
It's interesting you bring up health insurance because it's a very timely topic right now because there's an amendment coming on the ballot here in November, Amendment D, which is for Medicaid expansion. Not that I want to advocate for it or against it. I think there's a lot to dig into there. But what was your experience like navigating the marketplace, and what resources did you find along the way that were helpful, or where were those pain points?
Yeah. So I, like most people, Googled it.
Yeah, Google it.
I Googled it and was just like, I
have that easy.
No clue how to go about this. And I also think, I have a very supportive family.
Sure.
And my siblings and my parents were so awesome in the pushing me to become a full-time entrepreneur. However, they all have health insurance through their businesses, through their companies.
Safety nets.
So it was really me being the first person to navigate, how do I do this, And so they kind of also helped me research it and try to figure it out.
Yeah.
I ended up going with a health insurance agent locally. I also spoke with a health insurance agent I found on Instagram, because I'm a millennial.
Awesome.
And, I spoke with one out of New York.
Oh, wow.
And, then kind of once meeting with one local, kind of realized, oh yeah, someone from New York doesn't necessarily know how South Dakota health insurance might work, or gets me in a different marketplace, if that makes sense. And so I kind of just navigated and trial and error, but then I also, back to figuring out these resources are right in our communities.
Right.
And I just never have needed them,
right.
And so really opened my eyes to how many people are out there wanting to help us small business owners. And, we just have to find them.
Hey, this is Jeff Hayward with Startup Sioux Falls. Welcome back to the Co.STARTERS Challenge, a recurring segment where we'll provide some tips for launching or growing your startup, as well as an action you can take called fieldwork. In previous episodes, we talked about the importance of customer discovery. Too many startups launch with a product that the founder loves before making sure the customers exist who also want to buy the product. Once you identify who your customers are, the next step is to determine how many of them exist. What is the market size? How many customers could you have? Here's your fieldwork. Consider your market size. Are you selling locally, regionally, or nationally? Out of the total possible customers you might reach, how many do you think would realistically choose your solution? It's hard to get an exact number here, but asking these questions will help inform your sales strategy. That's all for this episode. Good luck on your fieldwork, and I'll see you next month.
Again, I want to go back to so you've gone through this process, this Co-Starters program, and then it's over.
Mm-hmm.
And you are paired with a mentor, correct? So you've had a little bit of mentor.
That was optional for our
optional.
group. Yep.
What do you need next? And what can this ecosystem do to help support you in that next phase of your business? We don't want to leave anybody hanging, right?
Right.
So Co-Starters is just the beginning, is what we like to say. But what resources are you going to need moving forward? And for those listening that might have a solution for you, this is your chance. What do you need, Kendra?
Yeah, I think mentorship is huge, and I will be getting one through the Women's MB Leadership
Awesome.
Program.
Oh, you're going through that too?
Yes, and
congrats.
So thank you. I'm really excited about that.
Yeah.
And so that will be my mentorship opportunity, and I couldn't be more grateful for it.
Fantastic.
I think mentorship is a big piece of the puzzle for entrepreneurship, and I'm really looking forward to that.
Yep.
I also think one thing that's nice about what Co-Starters is continuing to offer us going through the program is still one-on-one coaching with Co-Starters.
Yep.
And so there's still resources that Co-Starters provides us with in monthly webinars and things like that as a larger Co-Starters group, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And I think from a local standpoint, continuing to support us in our journey, continuing to, I love the quote that says, surround yourself with people who would say your name in a room full of people, a room full of opportunities. And I think continuing to, advocate for our businesses and support our businesses, but also continuing to point us to, hey, that resource is out there. Here's how to do it. Or the other day, we got an email from our facilitator saying, here's a grant opportunity.
Yes.
Go sign up. And things like that, where as business owners, we're not necessarily looking for this stuff week after week. We don't know what we're looking for. And just continuing to point the way of, hey, here's next step. Here's what you could use. You could use a grant, apply, that sort of thing has been something that I've really appreciated after the program.
So you're alumni now. So you're in the system. We are invested in you from beginning till whenever the end shall be.
And I'm very appreciative of that.
I was also curious. So you've lived quite a few different places in your life, but you grew up in Mitchell and you are now relocating to Sioux Falls.
Yes, I am.
There are some, I think, probably more misconceptions than are actual truths about, rural versus, the big cities in our state, where we're so interconnected. We share the same zip code. What are some of those misperceptions, and what are some of maybe the truths that come from, who's got all the resources, and how do those rural communities navigate through this world of entrepreneurship?
Yeah, good question.
Curious.
So like you mentioned, I grew up in Mitchell.
Yeah.
I went to school in Yankton for a couple years. I got my degree in Brookings, and I then went out to Rapid City for a couple of years, and also lived in Sioux Falls for the last 3-4 years.
Nice.
And so I've kind of been all over the state.
Yeah.
I would say doing the Co-Starters program in Mitchell, in my hometown, really opened my eyes to the amount of resources that were in my hometown. To me,
wonderful.
Mitchell seems small. To me, that seems like a small town. I think there's probably 13 to 15,000 people there. And I was just blown away by the amount of support and the amount of resources that were in that town.
That's wonderful.
And likewise, after the Co-Starters program, I had been, reached out to by like the town of Vermilion to talk about the Co-Starters program, and, different towns like that. And they're all starting it, and they all have the resources, even in Brookings, having 1 million cups in Brookings and things like that.
Yeah.
I think I wasn't looking for it when I was in those towns, but they're all there, and the resources are all there.
That's amazing. That's so great to hear.
You don't have to necessarily be in Rapid City or Sioux Falls to seek out those resources.
Fantastic. What was it like working with Dakota Resources? So they were the spoke organization for this particular cohort. So as we're navigating this grant, we have we felt like it was best to work with nonprofit organizations across the state that already have the relationships with the communities that we're trying to serve that we don't have the capacity to. So I'm just curious what it was like to work with that group of individuals who really are passionate about empowering rural communities.
Yeah, it was awesome. And I think they sat in on a few of the Co-STARTERS programs, and it was just, it was so exciting. And also, it was such an honor that they're taking the time out of their day and out of their busy schedules to invest in our small communities.
Absolutely.
And to invest in our small businesses. To me, my small business is my life. It's my lifestyle, and just to see, for me, it's only me, my family and my friends support me, but to see, these larger organizations that they don't know me personally, but they took the time to now get to know me and invest in me, my business, and my future. And I think that was something I'll be forever grateful for.
That is wonderful. And as the Startup Sioux Falls organization, I think part of this grant opportunity is it's a learning process for us to identify what those true gaps are in the ecosystem and how we can continue to provide these types of resources to diversified communities over time, even with or without grant funding. I see a lot of opportunity, and I'm assuming you do too. I'm hoping that we can keep going with this. So I really appreciate you sharing those insights. That's really important to this process. So now that we're all warmed up and we're getting towards the end here, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to just give an elevator pitch for your business. Sell it, Kendra.
Sounds good. So my business is Kendra Cersosimo Creative. I work with businesses to elevate their brand across platforms. And so whether that be billboards, business cards, brochures that they need designed, or they need social media help from content creation to social media advertising, or even web design or support in digital advertising. Basically, I work with businesses to provide these marketing services.
Nailed it.
Thank you.
Last, I'm going to do a lightning round with you because it's always fun to get to know Kendra as a person. And some of these questions are business related, but we'll start with Google Workspace or Outlook?
Ooh, I'm a Google fan. I am Google Workspace.
Canva or Photoshop?
Photoshop. Okay. I think any graphic designer
it's controversial
would say Photoshop.
But coffee or tea?
I actually am not a coffee drinker, so I love chai teas.
You're an outlier.
Yes.
That's interesting. Hoodie or blazer? I'm thinking I know the answer to that one.
I love me a good blazer. I've become a blazer girl.
Yeah, girl. Beer or wine? Or neither?
I like wine.
Yeah.
I like both. I will say I like both.
Are we becoming best friends?
I think so. I think we're already there.
Instagram or LinkedIn?
Ooh, I love
personally.
It. I like Instagram personally.
Yeah. Yep, I'm with you. TikTok or no? There's no alternative.
I have not branched into TikTok, and so I'm trying to stay off it as long as possible.
You sound like everybody else. Chocolate or vanilla?
Vanilla.
Mm-hmm. Yep, check. Baseball or football?
Oh.
I know you're a sports fan.
I'm a sports fan. I am actually, on my bucket list is to go to every MLB stadium. And so I'm over halfway there. So I'm going to say baseball.
Wow. That's really, really interesting. Who's your team?
The Twins.
Yay.
Yes.
We are best friends.
I think
you're
so
checking
too.
all the boxes. Favorite movie or book?
Ooh, my favorite movie is, this is going to sound ridiculous, and I'm hoping people aren't judging me out there.
They are.
My favorite movie is The Internship with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson. And they work for Google?
Yes.
Yes, I love that movie.
That is so fabulous. And then speaking of that, can you name an entrepreneur that you admire?
Ooh,
locally or globally?
I think there's many of them.
Yep.
I think locally, I'm going to go back to Audra Rue.
Yeah.
So I grew up doing gymnastics.
Yep.
And Audra started when I was in elementary school and started off just in the rec center gym. And then we moved to
humble beginnings.
Yes. And then we moved to the Casey Hall gym, which we were vaulting from out the door.
Yeah.
And we'd have to run into the building and run out to do the vault. And I think now she's grown into this beautiful gym in Mitchell and has many state championships, which it's also not what it's about.
Yeah.
But just the success of that business and the success of her gymnasts and also the life lessons being taught. I just have so much admiration for the starting small and really growing. So
I'm going to have to talk to her next.
yes, Audra Rue out of Mitchell.
It's been a pleasure getting to know you better, and thank you for sharing your insights. That's it for this edition of Start Dakota, and we hope to see you next time.
Thanks for joining us for Start Dakota. Visit our website at startupsiouxfalls.com to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, YouTube, or wherever you listen to your podcast. If you enjoyed the show, please tell a friend to rate our show on iTunes. If you are a founder and aspiring entrepreneur, you can get started by visiting our website at startupsiouxfalls.com/start. Start Dakota is made possible by funding from the U.S. Small Business Administration. With this funding, Startup Sioux Falls is piloting an expanded version of its Co.STARTERS Business Accelerator program and providing additional resources to support underserved founders. Start with Startup Sioux Falls.